Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I'd like to welcome you to my tutorial on working with Eclipse projects. In this Java course, we are going to be handing in our work two different ways. In the beginning of this semester, we're going to be putting each week's assignments in a new Eclipse project. And then we are going to be exporting that project into a zip file and submitting the zip file. So that's a skill I'm going to show you now. Later on, we're going to be working with a Git repository, and the workflow will be similar but not exactly the same. So let's have a look. So we're going to use Eclipse. And I'm going to click down in the dock and crank up Eclipse. And one of the things I want you to do is to notice the name of the directory that's being used as the workspace. And this was the default that happened when I did the installation. It's within my documents folder, and it's called Workspace. And I mentioned that here because we're going to work in two different workspaces over the course of this tutorial, and I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Okay, so let's create the project. Okay, so we're going to take that default workspace and accept that. Eclipse is going to start up. Okay, and I see I had my hello world open. So first of all, since we're going to put each assignment in its own project, then the name of the project should reflect the name of the assignment, okay? And the name of our assignments are things like Chapter 1, Coding Practice, Chapter 2, Coding Practice, things like that. And so I'm going to imagine that there was this initial assignment for a mythical Chapter 0. So I'm going to create a Java project, a new Java project called Chapter 0 Coding Practice. So how do I do this? Well, the easiest way is to right-click in the Package Explorer panel on the left, choose New Java Project, and I'm going to call it Chapter 0 Coding Practice. And I'm just going to take all the defaults from this dialog, which means that I can simply click on Finish. So there's my Chapter 0 Coding Practice. And I'm going to open it up. And you can see I've got a source folder here, which is where I'm going to place my, my work. So having named the project for the name of the overall assignment, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to name these Java classes for the exercise that I'm doing. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to call it exercise 1. Okay, so I'm going to right-click on the source folder. So I want a new Java class. And I guess it might make it a little bit easier to understand. Now, we're just going to call these exercise 1. So exercise, always begin with a capital letter with the name of a class. Exercise. And I guess if we want these to sort in the proper order, and we can have more than 9 of them, we probably want to call this exercise 01. Okay? That'll get them all to sort into the right order. Okay. And I'm going to take the defaults except for I want to remember to ask for a public static void main. I want a main method created for me. So I'm going to check that box and click on Finish. And of course, we haven't learned how to do a whole lot yet in Java except to print things on the console. And of course, we'll do that. So I'm going to delete that single line comment, and I'm going to replace it with the statement that we use to print, which is system.out.println parens double quotes, and I am going to say this is exercise 01. And then we have to finish the quote. I don't know why it didn't automatically give me a closing quote. Normally it's set up to automatically give me a closing quote. I don't know if I gave it a fake or what happened. Okay, so now we're going to save this. We have all the errors out of it. We're going to save it. And you'll remember the first time that we run a Java class, we want to do it the long way. So I always like to work off of this big play button up here. So I'm going to take the drop down to the right of the big play button, choose Run As Java Application, and I can see a console tab pops up in this lower panel. This is exercise 001. Okay? And I go, oh, there's not a period on that sentence, so let's go back up and add a period at the end of the sentence. And I'm just going to save. And as you recall, once we have run the class the first time, then after that, we just simply have to hit the big play button. So now it says this is exercise 01 with a proper period. Okay, so in a typical assignment, I'm going to have more than one exercise. Okay, I'm going to have, perhaps I've assigned exercise 1, 8, and 15. So we would do each of those as a separate class, and we would name them appropriately. And so now we have a properly named project that you can tell which assignment it is. And we have properly named classes so you can tell which exercise it's supposed to be. And so then when I go to grade it, it's going to be pretty easy to identify your work and give you full credit for it. Okay, so now that I've done all that, how do I get this into a spot where I can upload my project to the place where I submit the assignment? For this course, it's going to be a Moodle assignment activity. Alrighty. So let's look at a couple of things. First of all, let's go to the Finder, and we see that these are this is the file system. I'm going to click on Documents. And the only thing I have here right now is Workspace. Okay, so let's create 2 more folders here. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Ready for Submission. Okay, so when I do my export, I'm going to export it into the folder Ready for Submission. So then when I go to work in the learning management system, in this case Moodle, and I want to submit a file, I'll know to look for it in Ready for Submission. Okay, that's good. And you remember that I also told you we're going to create a second workspace. So let's create a new folder right here. And let's call this, right now, let's call this alternative. Whoop. Change the name of it there. Come on, you little devil. Rename. Let's call it alternative workspace. Alternative underscore workspace. Okay. That's great. So I've got all of my directories set up within documents. That looks good. So I'm going to shrink that. So now I have to find out how to export a project. Now, as usual in Eclipse, there are a lot of ways to do it. But the easiest way is typically to work in this Package Explorer panel. So that's what we're going to do. And the right way to do this is to export an entire project at a time. So how do we do that? Well, we're just going to take the project that we want, Chapter 0 Coding Practice, and highlight it. Okay. And then we're going to right click and we're going to say we want to export. And once you've done this for a while, it gets easier to do, but you just have to know, the options. The options are not quite so obvious as they might be. So you can export a number of things, but we want to export something that's in this general folder. Okay, so something that's this type of file. And we want to export what's called an archive file. Now that turns out it will give it a .zip extension. Okay. Okay, so again, we open the general folder, we select archive file, and then we go down and click on the next button. And as you can see, it gives you a list of projects, and you can export more than one project into an archive file, but we're going to do these one at a time. And so because we began by highlighting the proper project, the one that's checked, Chapter 0 Coding Practice, is exactly the one that we want. Okay. And you'll notice that we don't have a button that we can click on yet that's useful, and that's because we haven't said where it's going to. All right. So we want to put it into a zip file, okay? And we want to put it into that directory that we created. So let's browse to that directory. Okay, so I'm just going to go and find documents. And then I'm going to go to Ready for Submission. Okay. And I'm going to say save. So it's currently called untitled.zip. And that doesn't really sound good. Okay, so let's name it after the project. So it doesn't automatically get the project name. Okay. So I'm going to call this Chapter 01 Coding Practice. So that's the name of the assignment. And when I can in file names, I'd like to use underscores rather than blanks. It's more reliable. So I think it's a good practice. So what's going to happen is that when I finish this, I'm going to get a proper project zip file called chapter underscore 01 underscore coding underscore practice.zip. Okay, so I'm going to take all the defaults. Okay, so all that I really did here is to point it at a properly named zip file in the proper directory and click on Finish. Okay, and it looks like it was successful. So how can we tell? Well, let's go look at the Ready for Submission folder. And that's just what we were expecting to see. Chapter 01 coding practice.zip. Now, you could trust that you did that right. Okay. Or, in which case you can stop now and submit this. Or you could go and test your work to make sure that you have properly done this. Well, how could you test it? Well, let's go take a look. The opposite of exporting a project is importing a project. Okay, so, we could import the project again and see if it works. And that will work reasonably well. But here, if we import it again, it'll import over top of the project that we already have. And of course, it already works. So maybe that would not be a good test of whether what we actually exported has all the parts it's supposed to have. So how do we get a clean space for projects? This is where we use the other workspace. Okay, so there are a couple of ways that you can point Eclipse at a workspace, which again is just a directory that holds the files that you're currently working with. Every time we start up Eclipse, we are asked, what's the workspace we want to work with? Okay, so we could quit Eclipse and start it up again, and we would have a choice. Okay, so we could point it at that alternative workspace. But there's a shorter way to do it, which is we can go up to the menu, and we can click on File, and there's a Switch Workspace. Now, since we don't have a bunch of workspaces, it's not really giving us a bunch of alternatives to pick. So we click on Other, and we're going to get a chooser. Oh, and look, we just get that dialog back that we're used to seeing at the beginning of the time when we bring up Eclipse. Okay, so if we take the drop down, we'll see that's the only one that's been chosen so far, so we don't have another good choice, but let's browse. And we'll see that we've got Workspace, and now here's our alternative workspace. Let's click on that and click Open. So now we'll see it's got the proper name, Alternative Workspace. We're going to click on OK. And what really happens is it stops Eclipse and starts Eclipse. So you really haven't saved a lot from having gone all the way through a stop and a start, but I wanted you to see that you didn't have to stop Eclipse in order to get that dialog up again. And you'll see that we have a welcome panel again, and that's because every time you use a new workspace, it kind of thinks you're new to Eclipse. It looks and goes, wow, this is a completely new workspace, so we're going to go and welcome the user. So when you come into a new workspace, you get this welcome panel. Let's close that by clicking on the X. And then you'll see that we're in the Java perspective, which is what we want, so that's good. And we're going to want to import from that zip file, we're going to import a project and have it put into the Package Explorer for us. So let's, again, there's a number of ways you can do this, but the one that I find most convenient is to right-click in the Package Explorer panel and pick Import. We get a dialog that's pretty much like the one that we had when we did the export, except we're going to use it. We're going to make slightly different choices. Like we did before, we're going to open up the folder for General. Okay. And you would think, well, we exported an archive file, so we're going to import an archive file, and it's just not true. I know from experience that we want to pick existing projects into Workspace. Well, why? Well, because that works. Okay? And an archive file is not going to get the job done. Okay? So we're going to pick in the general folder existing projects into Workspace, and we're going to click on Next. Okay. And now we're going to have to browse to find the file. So let's click on Browse. And I'm going to go to Documents and Ready for Submission. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here in the second panel. I'm going to pick Chapter 01 Coding Practice.zip. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I have to pick the directory. Yeah. It doesn't allow me to go all the way to the zip file. I have to pick the directory that it's in. So fine. Ready for Submission is the directory that it's in. Click on Open. Okay. And I'm sorry. I did the wrong one. So now I'm going to show you how to do it the right way. We want to select an archive file. That's why it wasn't working. Select an archive file. We want to browse. We want to go to Ready for Submission. And now we can click on Chapter 01 Practice.zip. There we are. And now when we click on Open, it's going to properly open it. All right. Sorry for the misdirection there. My apologies. Okay. And it says, okay, there are projects in here. There's only one, Chapter 0 Coding Practice. Okay. And what's inside of it? One project called Chapter 0 Coding Practice. That looks good. It's been selected. All right. Now we're just going to take all the defaults and click on Finish. And look what's popped up into the Package Explorer. We have a Java project, Chapter 0 Coding Practice. And let's click the little triangle to the left. Yeah, it's got a source folder. Let's click that. Yep, it has a default package now within there. And let's open that. And we have one class called exercise01.java. That's what we want. So why don't we double click on that? Okay, and geez, that looks like the program that we had. Now let's give it a run. Okay. So I'm going to go up to my toolbar. I'm going to click on the drop down next to the big play button and say run as Java application. And look what's happened in the console. So clearly you don't have to do this every time you do an export. You don't have to import it into another workspace in order to prove that you did it the right way. But I find that in the beginning, you even saw how I got crossed up on the import there. In the beginning, you can accidentally pick some of the wrong options. And so I think it's a really nice way to see that we can use this zip file archive format in order to export a project from Eclipse, import it back into another workspace in Eclipse. And it's a proper way to package up your work and to move it from workspace to workspace. So what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm going to take that zip file and import it into a workspace that I have for your grading. And then I'm going to be able to run your work. Okay? So that's how to package up your work. That's how to name your projects. That's how to name the classes. That's how to do the export. and at least say the first time you do it, here's how to create another workspace and do an import of the zip file, just to prove to yourself that you've done everything correctly. So that's all for this tutorial. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.